Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Borderwise and welcome back to From the Depths Subscriber Craft Review. And today we have another twofer, but before we get into that and these two ships submitted a very long time ago, on that note, just a reminder for anyone who's coming in and who's relatively new, submissions for this series are closed. I am not accepting any more. I am going to get through the list that I currently have now, and then I will be done. I'm not going to be reviewing ships, because, like, I know, it's by the time I reach the end of this list, it is going to be very repetitive, and it is time-consuming, and a wee bit stressful, and yeah, so that's not going to be a thing. So that's just a reminder for anyone coming in who doesn't know that already. But, on to the good news. There will be other series replacing it, and today I've got ships to review. So, here we are. So, what we have here is the ship in the foreground with the rather square-looking... what's it? Prow or bow? It's bow. It's the bow. Bow, wow, wow, wow. Anyways, that ship is the HSW MS Hukiksval by White Potato Salt, and the ship here in the background is possibly my favorite ship name ever, ThePieceOfShip by TheAceHD 2003. And I should emphasize it says piece of ship, not anything else. So here are two ships, and as you can probably guess from the name of Tyler's ship here, these are what I would call... don't want to say amateur, because that sounds rude, but not skilled builds. These are like, these strike me as craft that the builders are getting there. They're not completely new at the game, but there's a few things to work on. And so, as ever, we're going to start with the things that are good about them, starting with the Hukiksval. I do like that name, Hukiksval. The pros are, so let's turn all these guys off, actually, and we're going to spawn in, let's spawn in a water buffalo, because that's fun. Well, first off, you can see that there's flares and radar decoys that it spits up in the air and they fall back down. Reasonably good way to do it. Actually, that's going to drive me bananas. But over here, you see that these craft have pretty good shielding, and I'm going to try and review both of them at once. So, you see the Hukiksval has quite a lot of shields. Like, it looks like double-layered shields right here. In fact, it is. Quite artfully put together, and they're not on spin blocks or anything like that, which is very nice. I appreciate that. And the Destroyer version 2, or the piece of ship rather, also has shields. Considerably less, but it has them, and it has them where it does have them, they are... well, here's double-layered shields over here, so not as heavily shielded, but still pretty decently shielded. That's good things. And both of these ships... and I will get into the... jeez, that's a lot of decoys in the water. Jeez, Hukiksval. So, both these ships have pretty good alpha strikes. The Hukiksval has both torpedoes and missiles, so down here you have HE torpedoes. I believe that's... what the... actually, no, these are frag torpedoes, never mind. And they have ballast tanks and everything. Up here, you have EMP missiles, laser-guided as well. More on that later. These things could be optimized better because you don't need target prediction guidance with laser receivers. And while I'm at it, just want to point out that Beam Rider torpedoes are fantastic, but honestly, you should really only use frags for flavor with them, because high explosive... I believe it still is a better option for torpedoes. They don't get a buff anymore since the big missile update to explosive damage underwater, but I believe that fragment damage is reduced underwater anyway, because I think they count as, like, kinetic projectiles, which get a bit of a penalty underwater. I'm not sure of that, but that's what I'd assume. So there is that, and the piece of ship over here has torpedoes that face backwards, and these things are also laser guided, but these are laser designators, and they have explosive warheads. Unfortunately, they do not have ballast tanks, which means they tend to ride rather high in the water, and they miss targets that are deep under the surface. So, cool, and Other thing, like, I am pleased that I could find both these two ships on my list because there are numerous similarities. They both have PIDs, they both stay in the water, use engine power to stay afloat, but that's okay because they're reasonably hard to sink if you don't take out the engines, always a good thing with PIDs. And they both have decent armor, so if you go over here to the piece of ship, what we have here is 1, 2, 3, up to 4 layers of metal around here, so this is pretty good armor. It even has a wee air gap in here just in case heat is a thing, although really I think this is more for buoyancy. Has a few surge protectors as well, and gets a little bit thinner towards the front, which is quite normal for ships, as I believe. And towards the back, also very thick. Well, pretty thick. 3 layers of metal is decent armor. Because, well, it just gets the job done. So, if we do this, let's see, what's it, there we go. So if we go here, and, so the armor is 42 over here. So that is about as much armor, well, looking where I was at, like, that is about as much armor as a layer of heavy armor, so, and much cheaper and lighter to boot, so below the waterline on this thing is actually pretty good. And over here, and jeez, I love this tool, I should use more often. The Hukiksval armor is a little bit thinner, but still pretty respectable. So if we go here and we just cast this around, it's hovering between 30 and 40, so yeah, respectable. Pretty decent armor, like, for the hull. And it doesn't do that thing which a lot of less experienced builders do, which is spam heavy armor all over the place, which is very expensive and heavy and just makes a lot of trouble. Their PIDs also make them gently move backwards in the water, which is, I don't know, some people would get driven crazy by that. I personally don't mind since they're moving very slowly, so that's about half a meter per second, and that's slightly over half a meter per second. I don't personally mind that. And what else? Weaponry. So, the Hukiksval is armed with advanced cannons. It's got 2 penetration depth, high explosive 150mm guns. We'll get to that. And it has these little 100mm flat guns over here. So the shell looks like this. More on that in a minute. And the other shell looks like this. So, lots of gunpowder, base bleeder, penetration depth, lots of HE, warheads, a few solids, and an AP cap. So, that's what the Hukiksval is armed with. Plus the EMP missiles and torpedoes, of course. The piece of ship has crams, for which it automatically gets points for effort in my book, because crams are easy to make, but hard to make good. A little bit like an English degree, so over here you see the cram settings, which I don't know why I clicked on that, that's pretty useless. But these are high explosive frags, so if you look down in the cram menu, these have been setting for a long time, so their damage values are a little bit out of whack, but they use high explosive and frag, so these are, well, pretty standard crams really. It's interesting how it appears that it has 2 cannons in the back, 2 turrets rather, and 1 in the front, so presumably this thing is meant to run away from opponents a lot, which is fair enough because that's how broadside settings work in this game, much to my annoyance. And as far as defense goes, the piece of ship has lambs. More on that later, and if I say more on that later, it basically means it's bad and they should fix it, so heads up right there. And what else can we say about the Hukiksval? Good shielded, good alpha star PID, APS, flares, decent armor. This has an efficient engine as well, so if we dive down in here, you'll see that the temptation always is for engines to, like, good on you, White Potato Salt, for using carburetor turbocharger engines rather than injectors, because injectors are easy. I stuck with them for a long time. It's only recently I realized, wow, like, you get so much more efficiency out of using these things. This one looks like a prefab of the useful fuel engine platform, which either means that that's where White Potato got it from, or he can make an engine well enough that looks like it, so well done there. And over on the piece of ship, I'll never get tired of saying that, what else have I mentioned? Torpedoes, crams, shields, PIDs, lands, decent armor. It's got a little timed frag cannon up here, just a little one. And this works quite a bit better than... What gauge is that? Oh my god, really? So what gauge is this? It is 54 millimeters. So there's just a little anti-air gun here, because, as anyone who's watching probably knows, crams suck at anti-air duties, knock out against small erratic targets, and props to Tyler for making this. This ship has internals. It actually looks quite good. See, I never do this. I've said this before. Don't bounce, Rambot. I've said this before on, well, in many videos, is that I don't bother with decorations for the most part. I don't know. I can never be bothered to do it. But I always appreciate it when someone else does it, because it just shows that they want to add teeny tiny bits to their ship. And see here, little windows, little railings, little stairs up here, and there's an upstairs, all that stuff. So bonus points for style right there. I believe, does the Hukiksval have the equivalent? Not really. I believe... No, it does. Hello. Well, not really. Not that I can see, anyway. So, Hukiksval doesn't have decorative stuff, but that's fine. That is A-okay. I thought this telescope was a machine gun for a second. Jeez. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. I just noticed that. Mainframe does not have enough processing power, so detection rate reduced to 28.5, blah, blah, blah. So, that's a problem. Wait. Are they all like that? They are. That's... Oh dear. Oh dear. I guess we can move on to the problems now. And so, as tends to be the case, I'm going to spend a lot longer on the issues with this ship. These ships rather than anything else. So, the first one is the big one, is that these two ships were submitted to me long before the big missile update happened, which means that their ammo production does not keep up with their rate of fire with their missiles and torpedoes. So they burn through materials much faster than they would otherwise, and I put the call out some time ago for people to say, like, if you still want your ships reviews, please update them, because the missile update has screwed everything up. These two didn't get back to me, so sorry, your ships are being reviewed as is. But keep in mind, particularly when you see these things fight, that the missiles, that they were never designed with this many missiles in mind. And the easy way to fix this is just reduce the amount of missiles and torpedoes on them by about 3/4. I am not going to do that because I don't mess with your designs after you send them to me. That's your job. So, that's the first thing. And so, over here, I've already mentioned that these torpedoes, well, these ones have... What the hell? Let's cross that out. I'm getting these ships confused because actually they are quite similar in many ways. And I can cross buoyancy issues out because that was when I was first spawned these in, dropped them in the water from a great height, and they kind of sank. So that's not what... So the first thing, and we'll do the Hukiksval first because that's nice and simple, is... I don't usually comment on aesthetics, but this turret right here and its brother back here... This is ugly. I'm sorry, I think, like, I don't... As I said, I don't usually go in for that kind of thing, but this is just gross. It is a box. That's just nasty. And it would be really, really easy just to fix. You can pretty much do this. So if I do so, let's go over here. Go over here. Just round off the front a little bit so it doesn't look quite like, you know, Lego. That would be very nice. I mean, ta-da, that already looks slightly better in my book. Or you could even stick ERA on the front here. ERA tends to work well as decoration because goodness knows it's not good for anything else. You could do something like this. In fact, that looks quite nice. Ta-da! Still doesn't look amazing, but still, it's better than just the box. I mean, come on. Come on. This is meant to be a turret, for crying out loud. Turrets don't look like this. They never look like this. Okay, that is entirely my opinion. Don't have to listen to me there, but I suggest you listen to the other bits I'm going to say, because firstly, this flak. And this might have been made a long time ago, back when flak was still somewhat decent. What the nonsense? What is the gauge on this? This is 100 millimeters. Okay. 100 millimeter flak does nothing. This is 96 damage. That, and a radius of 24, that is really pathetic. That does not do any damage. In fact, the annoying thing about the way flak works in From the Depths is that it really only starts getting useful around at very high gauges. So 300, 400, even 500 millimeters, that's when flak starts getting useful, because it gets that massive radius and actually respectable damage. 100 millimeter flak? Not good. You're better off using timed frag, as like what's on the piece of ship, because even frag, especially if it's set to a very wide angle, actually does damage. So each fragment, individual fragment here, does more damage than the entire explosion of the previous flak shell. And if you do this, if you ramp it up to 180, since this is a timed fused shell, it gets a lot higher. This is only 100 millimeters, and it's got 48 fragments, and each fragment does over 300 damage. At this gauge, frag is absolute king. Like, basically, the way that it's been explained to me, so here we have 250 millimeters, right in the middle of shell sizes. Everything to the left of this slider is either frag or kinetic shells. And that's basically it. You get a little bit more leeway this way, you can start messing around with stuff. Like, no hard and fast rule, but generally, stuff like EMP or penetration depth, stuff for squash heads or heat or like flak, HE, and disruptors, all that stuff, that should be on this side of the line. In fact, preferably about up to 400 millimeter is when you want to really start using things like disruptors or like disruptors or high explosive. In fact, like, it's really 450 to between 400 500 is where you want to use flak. Between 450 and 500 is where you really want to start using high explosive, because at this gauge, flak and HE just does not do enough damage. On that note, the main guns are also like that, because these are tiny. Like 150 millimeters, if you stick big sabot shells or AP cap shells in here, that's quite dangerous. That can, against unshielded targets, that's actually quite good. These are penetration depth, and they don't do crap, I'm afraid to say. So we go here, so the kinetic damage is not very respectable, so this thing would struggle to get through one layer of metal, because the armor piercing value is quite low, and the kinetic damage is quite low. The explosive damage is pretty bad. It's like, this is only gonna knock blocks off if it actually gets inside a target. This could deal with a wooden target. As soon as something is alloy or metal or even stone, nah, that's not gonna cut it. And they also do not have inertial fuses on them, so if they hit something that can't penetrate, or if they hit a shield, they're just gonna bounce off and do nothing. So that's no good. These are way too small. Okay. This thing also has too many radars. So up here you have 4 radars all here. Get rid of the flag, you could stick 1 in. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we've immediately got some processing power back. And the funny thing about 360 detection systems is that they check up, they check forward and backward, left and right and up. They do not check on diagonal lines. They're a little bit like in chess, how a rook moves. So you can stick things diagonally of them quite nicely, and they can still detect stuff, which is very nice. And you don't need these. You really do not need these. So already we've cleared up this a little bit. Too many radars is, especially too many 360 detectors. These things don't have good detection settings. So if we go here, the angular error and the bearing error of 360 radars is 2%, which is awful. It's really not good. The range error is 0.4%, which is a lot better. But still, like, you really only want as few 360 trackers, well, detection equipment on your craft as possible, because more straightforward ones are much better. In particular trackers, you want very few 360s, only a few 90s, and the rest preferably trackers. So things like laser rangefinders trackers. The range error on laser rangefinders is absolutely great, because the range error is 0.1%, very good. Camera gimbal trackers are very good with bearing, as are telescope trackers. Coincidence rangefinders are also good with bearing. IR detectors are pretty crap, I never use them. And cameras tend to be good with bearing, and radar is good with range. That wouldn't intend it. Basically, don't have too many 360 detectors, it's just not a good idea. And another thing is something I noticed with a lot of ships that are in the early days of a shipmaker's career is that they sometimes look like this. You probably don't want to stick your propellers right on the back like this. Firstly, because it, I don't know, and this is where I start criticizing aesthetics again. This is a wee bit ugly. I know there are people out there who are really into aesthetics who would just throw up in their mouths if they saw something like this. And it's exposed. One decent shell coming in like, boom, will blow all these off. So that's absolutely no good at all. What I tend to find works well is stringing them out underneath the craft. So either build a roof over it, so have a little tail sticking out of it just over the props like this, act as an umbrella, or stick them on the sides or underneath, which gives you a little bit of redundancy. It means that it's harder to destroy or damage most of them in one shot, so that's worth a point. Now, the other thing we're bouncing back and forth because I just noted these things as I found them. These turrets do not have internal armoring. I have completely lost count of how many times I've said on this series how important it is to do that, because it means that, well, it means that heat is going to blow these off, it means that penetration depth shells are going to tear these. Any kind of anti-armor weapon that gets past the shields and hull is going to destroy these really easily, and it's just a horror show. And the other thing I should probably mention is, well, let's place that again. Just an example, this is not good turret Tetris, I'm sorry to say. It is got waste space in it, so if we go from one side, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, except that it's got 6 spaces wasted right here. So you don't want wasted space in your turrets, you want them as compact as you can. And just, I would recommend looking up on the workshop stuff like, well, Awelner's platforms for APS and CRAM, by the way. I'm going to recommend the CRAM platform again in a minute. I recommend that, to just downloading and having a squiz at that to see efficient Tetris for both APS and CRAMs, because this is less than ideal. Sorry to say. So if we go here and we delete that, oh yeah, shout out to Awelner. Hi Awelner. Hope you're doing well. So, where are we? So, on our turret, so it's got for APS Tetris, and it is a repair monster, so this thing eats money, because if we go way over here, where did I see that? I saw it somewhere. Ah, here we are. Right kind of in the middle of it, there's a lot of repairables. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 40 repair bots. Is my math right? 8 times 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 40 repair bots. That is a lot of repair bots. Probably overkill for a craft this size. Because it's something that I've really come to believe is that your ship should not rely on repairs for survivability. Repairs should be a bonus, and ship design should be what actually keeps your ship alive. So these days I test my ships without them. I always, when I'm prototyping something, I always leave repair bots to the very last. In fact, material storage, repair bots, and ammunition processors until the very last. Just to see how well they do without them. And then when you just add, well, even just 2 repair bots, that makes a big difference and doesn't eat all your money very fast. Like, those of you who've watched the early days of my Nita campaign playthrough you'll be able to see how I learned that the hard way. Repair monster, and while we're in here, what's over here at the center of mass? Ammunition. That is a bad idea. Like, you always have to keep aimpoint spoofing in mind, and I really long for the day in which aimpoint selection is not a thing in this game, because it's just so stupid. Like, no offense to the devs, but it is just a bad mechanic, because it just means that aimpoint spoofing is something that you absolutely have to do, because otherwise, like, ships psychically know exactly where you've stashed your ammo and your AI, and they aim for it immediately, which doesn't really make any sense unless everybody has everybody else's schematics. And usually with aimpoint spoofing, what you want is you want to have ammo barrels way at the back, so actually a bit like these over here. And you do not want them because at the rear of the ship, if an enemy cannon is leading the target, it's far more likely to miss if the thing it's aiming at is at the rear, because then the front turns, the rear turns, and the shell either overshoots or undershoots. I've said that before as well. If you have ammunition in the middle, this is the part of the ship that moves the least, and so it's the most likely to be hit. And if a cannon's aiming here, it has a much greater chance of hitting it. It's why in the past I've, like, bothered the devs about implementing, like, center of mass aiming, simply because it makes way more sense. Unfortunately, like, it probably would be a little bit overpowered with some weapon types, but that's an argument for another day. For now, it's just not a good idea to stick AI or ammo barrels anywhere near the center of mass, because they will get shot at, and the center of mass is, like, by far the easiest part of your ship to hit. And so, another thing is that this thing is well shielded, I should mention, and wherever the ACBs are for this, I know they're around here somewhere. Somewhere there are ACBs in this house. Okay, there we go. So, here we have the sonar boys that I forgot to mention. The sonar boys. And somewhere else around here is the ACBs that control the... Okay, if I do that, can I see ACBs? Hello? Ah, here they are. So, these shields activate when an enemy is closer than 2,000 meters. There is a big problem with that, and that is that particularly advanced cannons, they can shoot further than that. I, in fact, have been prototyping a ship recently that is, in fact, designed to shoot shells quite accurately from beyond this range. So, like, this is not a good idea. It's best to, although it may seem like a waste of power, it's best to ramp this number up all the way, because 5,000 meters is a much safer number. It means that even if there's, well, a ship with a railgun shooting at you from over the horizon, your shields are up and ready for it. So that's something to know right there. And the other thing to mention is on these guns here, you will notice that these are 1 meter elevation mantlets. These are not very good. They are cheap and they are small, and not even that cheap, because the 3 meter elevation mantlet is actually not that... Oh god, that's really disgusting. Okay. Okay, that'll do. So over here, like, the 3 meter mantlet has between 45 and 65 degrees of elevation, and this one has 20 to 40, so this thing elevates a lot higher and a lot lower. And frankly, I'm not sure when exactly you would ever use, like, these small mantlets, because they're not much cheaper, they have a much smaller, like... area of fire. I think they have wider azimuth, between 5 and 20, between 5 and 10. Yeah, they have better azimuth, but that just means that on a turret, they're pretty useless. So instead of that, what you could do is get rid of a lot of these things. Go here, and elevation mantlet. Suddenly you have a big mantlet in here, which also I think looks better, assuming that you tidy up the thing around it. We'll leave that to another day. So yeah, one more thing, it's got no deck shielding, so if we turn all these guys off again and spawn in a shuriken,
turning off.
You will note, and yes, I've dropped it in the water, so now it needs to get out of the water. Actually, wait, I don't need to do that. Whee. So you will notice that there's pretty much no armor covering the deck. And this is I don't know, this is a matter of choice. It depends on what you expect your ship to be shot at by, but I think that even just a single layer of shields on the deck is a good idea, because it stops, particularly when you're fighting airships or any kind of flying thing that has guns. If they shoot down at you, that is a real issue. And also if you're fighting things that have cram cannons or like low velocity APS, in other words, plunging fire, you get a shell arcing over shields that are just covering the waterline, and they crash onto the deck and start popping off superstructure, destroying like missiles and all that stuff, and it's just a really bad time. So deck shields are a good idea. And it almost has excessive decoys, so if we spawn in something that spits out a lot of missiles, and the Hornet's Nest is my go-to for this. Ah! I was about to say it had excessive decoys, but, nah, I should say it has excessive sonar decoys, because, I don't know, I've never had much luck with these things, but, you see how many of them it's spitting out right now? You could stick a single anti-torpedo turret in there, and that would do a much better job. Because, geez, look at this. This is just nuts. Okay, destroy you. And that's about it for the Hukiksval. There's a lot of work to be done on that, I feel. And now on to the piece of ship, which has thankfully got less things wrong with it. But, yeah, let's park the Hukiksval for a second. So, pull these out of play, and jump on you. And immediately, like I've already kind of demonstrated, something that is a bit of an issue. This thing has a LAM system. The LAM system in question was built before the big LAMs nerf, which means that it is currently pretty damn useless. In fact, a lot of LAM systems are just not very good right now. That killed barely anything. Well, the LAM system killed barely anything. The missile swarm killed things quite nicely.
Taking control.
And let's just see the piece of ship get a little bit of revenge right here. Don't worry, I'm going to show these two ships fighting each other. And you gotta love big crams. So now let's jump back over here.
Listening.
How do I jump onto you? Like so. We repair laser beam thing. It's fantastic. Okay, so it's got a weak LAMs, and it's also got excessive nodes. It's got way too many nodes up here. It's got nodes that are kind of, well, here, there, and everywhere. And it's got nodes hidden over there. That's no good. It also has a very hungry steam engine. So if you look down in the right corner, I'm gonna turn resource supply off. And you see just how far we're not even in combat, and that is how fast the materials are draining. That is very expensive, especially for such a reasonably small, cheap vessel. Not worth it. So, we're just gonna let that tick down as an object lesson. And as the Hukiksval had poor APS Tetris, so this craft has poor cram Tetris. It is not what I consider ideal. So we're gonna go over here. And also unarmored turrets, so that's a bit of a whoopsie right there. So at first glance you might think this is alright, but then you do this and you realize, oh right, the high explosive pellets are only attached to one autoloader, and that goes for both turrets. Meanwhile the frag is attached to 2, so bad priorities right there. And these ones are attached to 2, fair enough. I usually try and keep these explosive pellets attached to at least 3 or 4, because these are expensive. You do not want to have more of these things than you need to. High explosive pellets, 70 materials each. For the record, like 70 materials is almost the cost of a full beam of heavy armor. It is expensive. So, again, Tyler, I recommend you have a look at Owelna's Cram Tetris Mark II platform. Very good. I learned stuff off it. And yeah, like you could easily fit a much more efficient turret in here. So, although you are... And also armor, because even with cram turrets, since they're not as volatile, you're more likely to get away with it. But still, armoring the turret itself is a great defense against heat, pesh, and just generally has the thing be more survivable. And it also means that you need to stick less armor on the hull, which means you can have a smaller ship and bigger guns, which is always quite nice. So, gonna do that. There's also something to note, and this is just a tiny little nitpick. You'll notice that for this timed frag gun, which works reasonably well, by the way, timed frag is a good anti-air thing. These are see-through clips. Now, there's nothing wrong with see-through clips, except that they do take processing power of your computer to run, because they have to render each individual shell before it's even fired. So the recommendation that I keep hearing is use over at advanced cannons. Here, ammo clips. You have ammo clips, but you also have solid clips. So all that is it's an ammo clip, but it's not see-through, and so the shells aren't rendered, and it means your computer doesn't gag on these turrets any more than it needs to. So, worth talking about there. Also radars. Radars seem to be a thing here. Sideways radars. I would recommend having something like this. So, what the hell is going on here? Oh, this is on a turret. Right. Right, she cried. Okay, so AI connector. Something like this, methinks. So detection equipment. What do we have up there? We had rangefinders of some kind. So groovy thing with regular rangefinders is that you can stick radars on top of them. It also means you can get rid of these ones. So right here, boop. Ta-da! So this is, I think, a slightly better arrangement for you right there, because sticking, as I said before, try not to use any more 360 detectors than you absolutely need. These things are just for initial spotting of an enemy in all directions. They are not actually the eyes. They're like, think of them as ears, the early warning, and then you have other detectors which lock on and actually give good, decent, what's the word I'm looking for? Target information. Excuse me, I need to drink something. Ah, sweet H2O. I need to work on my talking. Excuse me. Throat's dry. I need to finish this up. Okay, so sideways 360 radars, and briefly I should mention it's got all the usual cram troubles. So, if I throw something fast and annoying at this, that doesn't get close enough for that frag gun to do the trick. So, what is something like that? What's fast and irritating? So, Firefly. So, usual story with crams, they're not good at fast annoying targets. Oh jeez, that's painful. However, that little AA gun has proven its worth quite well right there, because it managed to take that out. Looks like the torpedoes need altitude settings as well, because that's not good. Ah yeah, they really do. So yeah, torpedoes aren't good against flying targets, worth noting there. Weapon controller needs to be set for that. And last but not least, over here you have exposed repair bots. So this thing is also a wee bit of a repair monster. But one thing you should probably never do, and I've seen this multiple times on craft, including my own occasionally, is having repair bots sunk to the deck. This is not a good place to stick them, particularly if you still have room inside the craft right here. Ooh, it has steady blades. No, it doesn't. Those are batteries. My bad. Repair bots are everything you do not want on deck. They are expensive. They're 50 materials each. They are pathetically fragile. They've got 150 health and 5 armor. Compare that to a metal block, which has 350 health and armor 15 and is about 1/10 of the cost. And just, you need them to repair your stuff. So if your repair bots get destroyed, your repairs get slowed down. It's pretty straightforward, really. So really, you do not want them visible on deck ever. In fact, you probably want them hidden away deep, deep inside the ship, so that they're one of the last things to get blown up. Okay, so that's about it for these two craft. They're getting there, so I don't want to be excessively mean about anyone's ship, but these two craft need a bit of work, particularly with the missile update. Torpedoes and missiles need to be tweaked to be more effective, and you need to be less of them, because you don't need to spam them as hard anymore. So naturally, we're going to spawn these two ships in to kill each other, because I think that's what we all want to see. So over here, we have the Hukiksval. I'm going to put that as a Steel Strider's craft, because I like irony. Also, it fits, because it's got missiles and advanced cannons, and it's a ship. Steel Striders love that. And over here, get that line right up. Laser-guided missiles, I tip my hat off to you for using them, because I keep forgetting that they are a thing. I used to use them a lot, and then I found out that they're fooled by smoke, and then I was dismayed by the very thing. Watch and ThePieceOfShip. I still love that name. It is very self-deprecating, totally my style of humor. So here they go, and away they go, and immediately you'll notice that that Alpha Strike off the Hukiksval is going to do some hurt. Those are EMP missiles, but they do a lot of damage. They do a lot of EMP damage. That's if they hit. Yeah, and something to note about the new missiles, you do need to modify them. And laser-guided torpedoes are being flung out left, right, and center. Let's see how you're doing. Dropping loads of little decoys all over the place. Laser-guided torpedoes. Yeah, so you see right here, because these ships were built presumably at a time that torpedoes didn't explode each other. Yeah, they explode each other, so that's no good. Who's winning? So, Hukiksval is doing fine. Destroyer is currently copping it a little bit. And you see, now the Hukiksval is pretty much out of ammunition. It's having to use ammo processors. Didn't talk about how these guys are protecting their ammo, but they seem to do a reasonably good job. Doesn't get blown up that easily. How are we doing? The destroyer, the ThePieceOfShip, is eating materials very fast. Thanks to that steam engine, the Hukiksval is also eating through it very fast, and that's ammo production. And you can see the armor is doing a pretty good job. Just regular high explosive doesn't really do it. And unfortunately for the ThePieceOfShip, those pen depth shells are exactly the thing for taking out wood, and its butt is made of wood. Never looked at the targeting on these things. So yeah, it's knocking off a few wood beams that push. Oh wow, I missed that completely. That's why you internally armor your turrets, guys. Stops it flying slightly. The torpedoes are apparently flying. Yep, that might be game, set, match. I think the piece of ship has got this. 93, 98. Damn. It is weirdly cool how crams can essentially juggle craft. Although I cannot wait for the big cram update. Actually, I can't wait for a lot of things. I can't wait for Christmas. Actually, I can wait because I've still got to do all my Christmas shopping. Seems a weird thing to talk about in a ship review of From the Depths, but you know what? Here we are. Here we are. We've come so far. I'm eating a samosa. Yeah, I don't know the lyrics to that song. Should I let these guys go the distance? That could take a while. Whatever, it's a Sunday afternoon for me. I've got time. Hope all you people in the Northern Hemisphere are enjoying your cold, horrible winter, because down here in NZ, it is sunny days. So sunny, I'm hot and bothered. Not in the good way, either. Okay, I'm going to preemptively give this to, what do you call it, to the piece of ship, because frankly the Hukiksval is sinking and bouncing out of the water like a crazy person. Now I'm probably going to watch this go the distance because I'm hugely entertained right now, but I'll spare you the excitement of doing that. Or should I? Yeah, the Hukiksval has got a lot of materials left. This is going to take a long time. So, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you, White Potato Salt and Tyler Smith 2003 for sending these ships in. Took a very long time. And how does my spiel go again? Because thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to submission people. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like that. Yeah, see, I'm back on track. And I will see you next time in From the Depths Subscriber Craft Review. Farewell.